Hey team, this is Grant David Collins and welcome to Basement Philanthropy, a place for people who do not want to wait until they're rich or retired to create meaning, impact, and connection with their money regardless of the amount. On this episode, we get the absolute privilege of talking to Sabrina Clark, one of the first members of the Basement Philanthropy community, so let's get started. Sabrina and I went to college together, and we were friends inside and outside of the classroom. And so it has been really fun to really rekindle this relationship that I had with her around a new subject, the subject of micro-philanthropy. I'm so excited to be able to share this conversation with you, and there was really no better place to start the conversation than by revisiting some gripes that I have about Christmas giving and how you can be involved with that for the rest of the year, starting in January this month. So let's get started with my conversation with Sabrina Clark. Just by virtue of when we're recording this, Sabrina, this will likely come out after the Christmas season has been around. And what I would just say is, if it is January or February when this comes out and you're listening to this and you're like, oh, I haven't really been involved with giving for the last couple of weeks. Like, here is your wake up call. Here's the opportunity for you to remember some of the feelings and some of the dreams that you had during that season. And just a reminder to say, like, yeah, go out and get involved. And people always say, like, oh, Christmas has there's this beautiful feeling around Christmas time. It's such a wonderful time of the year. It's like, why do you think there's a good feeling around Christmas? Like, it's because we're giving, we're serving, we're getting outside of ourselves. And so those things aren't just Christmas time experiences. They can happen anytime, but we have to have the underlying foundation as well involved with that.
Absolutely. So if anyone's listening in February, please pause right now. Go set a goal, set a reminder in your phone to go give, to find a service opportunity, and then come back and listen to the rest. But put that reminder in your phone.
Well, you're fire, Sabrina. So I'm happy to have you on here anytime. Okay, so Sabrina, I want to kind of rewind back in time, so that we, as the audience, can kind of get a little bit of context around how you ended up on this podcast. I think it's always fun to be able to dig into people's lives a little bit, especially when it comes to giving and philanthropy. So I'm just curious, like, what memories or what experiences come to mind as you think back on your life, as far as introductions to giving or service or volunteer work, or, however that showed up when you were growing up?
Absolutely. So I'm going to be completely honest with you. When I was a little kid, I hated service projects. I hated giving. Was not a huge fan of it, which is really embarrassing to say. But for anyone out there who was, 7 years old and didn't like helping other people, there's hope for you.
Yes, absolutely. So what was it about service or giving or those types of things that for you as a 7-year-old, you're like, nah, it's not for me?
So the one memory that always comes to mind is my dad is the most service-oriented person I know. He's such a great example, and he's so fantastic. And as a kid, I remember we'd have to clean our church building on Saturday mornings, and he would wake us all up. Like I said, I have 9 siblings. I grew up with only 5. And be like, hey, guys, like, come on, up. We're going to go clean the church. Like, this is our service opportunity. It's our turn. It's our responsibility. Like, we got to do this. And as a 7-year-old, Saturday was the one day I could watch cartoons on TV, and that was the last thing in the world I wanted to do. I was like, this is the dumbest thing ever. I was like, no, I don't want to go take out the trash at my church building. I want to watch my Saturday morning cartoons, which is a very, very selfish mindset that I don't recommend anybody has. But when you're 7...
For all the 7-year-olds that are listening to the podcast, listen up.
That's right. Look beyond yourself. And then again, from like from a monetary standpoint, I paid my tithing as a kid, which is like 10% in our church. And I'm an accountant. You know that, Grant. For viewers who might not know, I'm a CPA. I like money a lot. And even as a 7-year-old, I liked money. And I was like, and now I have to give people my money too? I was like, this is the worst thing ever. I was like, I like having money. So again, very selfish, greedy little 7-year-old Sabrina was not a huge giver and didn't really like to do it.
Wait a second. Let me just jump in here real quick, Sabrina. You're painting yourself like you're the Grinch, but I think everybody that is listening to this podcast can relate to a 7-year-old wanting to watch cartoons and having a little bit of extra cash. So I don't think you're that different than most 7-year-olds out there. But I'm curious how this kind of starts to evolve. So when do you start to kind of transition more into, oh, maybe this is okay, maybe this is something that I can be involved with?
Yes. Thank you for keeping me on track. This does have a happy ending. I would say just growing up with my parents was such a great blessing to help me have this giving mindset, because both my mom and my dad are very service oriented. So I'd say maybe around my 12 to 16 years. Again, my parents were always involved in giving, and I feel like they just made maybe more of an effort to get me involved with their giving, or maybe I was just old enough at that point to be more help than a hindrance.
Yeah.
Because anytime my mom was going to go serve people, my mom brought a lot of meals to people, which I think maybe now, where I'm at now in my life, that's like my go-to service thing is let me bring you dinner, because my mom was such a great example of that growing up. So I would have to help make the food, and then she'd oftentimes would help me, or would take me to help her deliver it, so I could see the people receiving it and just see their gratitude and how it was alleviating their burdens. I think was the catalyst that helped me see kind of the reward of it. It was this is making a difference. This is helping other people. And then also as I got older and more mature, my dad went to every single moving project there was on the planet. He was every Saturday it seemed like he was helping somebody move in or move out. And my dad's a busy man. He runs his own business. He had 10 kids. I'm sure there were things that he probably wanted to do more than help somebody pack or unpack boxes. But he always made that a priority, that if you're available to help somebody else, you need to do it. You have that responsibility. And so just growing up with those two really great examples, I think helped me, one, see the importance of it and making it a priority, and two, seeing the benefit and the joy of the people receiving the service was a really great springboard to help me see, okay, this is worth it. This isn't just a waste of time.
Yeah. When did you start to make that switch from being a participant to being what I would just say a leader in your own life around this type of giving, service, philanthropy? I
think that probably happened in my college years. That's kind of what it reminds me of, because, going to college, we went to BYU, Idaho, away from, my hometown. I lived away from my parents, is when I just kind of started to take a bigger look at my surroundings instead of just having it in the purview of my parents or other people that I was around. And one experience I remember in particular was my friend Susan. She was in my tax class. We had, I think, an assignment due together that we were supposed to do. It might have been a tax return. And she texted me and was like, oh, hey, I'm really sick. I can't make it to our group meeting. I'm so sorry. Maybe we can do it tomorrow, but I'm just not feeling well. And I was like, oh, is there anything I can do for you? And I feel like we use this phrase a lot, and in the back of our minds, we're like, please don't say anything. I'm busy. I'm in college. I have limited resources. I have limited time. You're working on fumes at that point. And she was so kind. I was like, oh, no, I don't need anything. Thanks for offering. That's really, really sweet of you. And I feel like I had a paradigm shift where I was like, oh, she said no, but I want to do something for her. She's my friend, and I know she's not feeling well. I want to do something. So I remember I went home and I made her chicken noodle soup, and I got her, ginger ale and bread, and dropped it off. And that just made me feel so good that I could help in a very, very small way, but do something bring a piece of home to somebody else who's not feeling well. So I think that was one of the springboard that made me think, oh, even if someone says I'm good, I'm fine, you can still do something.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's such an interesting thing culturally here in the United States that we have around like when people are having something like in their life going on and we're like, is there anything I can do to help? And then they're like, no. It's like almost like saying, like, hey, how are you? It's like we're not actually asking how people are doing. We're just like looking for like something to say in a conversation. And it's when we are able to dive a little bit deeper into that or get outside of the box that we can start to see and understand where these giving opportunities are. And you can tell if somebody is really not open to like receiving something, but you can only tell if you break outside of the like regular back and forth that happens when someone's in trouble or has something come up in their life. And what I've noticed is that the only way to do that though is to have a little bit of time to be with that person around what's going on.
I love that, Grant. And I think so often people want to solve problems. That's how they want to help, which is great. Like, I think having a giving mindset is great. But oftentimes people just want to be heard. And like you said, like building that rapport, saying like, hey, tell me more about this. And as they're explaining it, you can then read into the situation and see maybe what would be more helpful. For example, like I said, I had that tendency. I like to just jump right in and I'm like, I know what I'm good at. I can make a killer honey lime enchilada freezer meal dish. I can just give to you and that's awesome for me. I feel good about myself. I'm like, you can just make it whatever you want. It's great. But that's not always the solution. And that's the problem that I run into is I'm like, oh, this is such a great solution. But if somebody needs a hammer and you're handing them a wrench, that's really not as helpful. Whereas somebody might, instead of a meal, they're like, maybe they have a fridge full of food. And they're like, my bathroom's a mess. My living room's a mess. Like, I need someone to come vacuum it and clean the bathroom. Or I need somebody to watch my kids while I can go to an appointment. And I think having that open-mindedness to what people need and want to receive might not necessarily be what you initially want to give, but being willing to change what you want to do to better help that person, I think is really crucial and important.
Yeah. It's this concept of like, instead of viewing a giving opportunity through your eyes, you're looking to view that through the eyes of the other person that is at play. And as you attempt to do that, because there's no way to actually view it through the other person's eyes completely, but as you attempt to do that, you're asking questions and being involved with that. That's when the real impact starts to be discovered, real impactful opportunities. So as you look at your life, you're in college, you start to make this switch around being more proactive in your giving or more self-sufficient in your giving. Tell me about what happens when you start to come in contact with this concept of like micro-philanthropy or like intentional giving and creation.
Yes. So just to give maybe your listeners some context. So we were at BYUI, like 5-6 years ago? So
yeah, it's been a little bit.
It's been a little bit. So yeah, there's been a lot of space, growth, maturity, in that time. And I would say, have you been doing micro-philanthropy? Like, you've been doing your, kind of advocating for this maybe for about a year. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. Okay. Publicly, it's been about a year.
Yeah. Yep. The first thought I had was like, oh, like, that's so great. Grant's doing that. Good for him. That was kind of my mind.
Yeah, right.
Good for him. Like, that's awesome. Like, that is so great. But I'm just like way too busy to do that or to like make it a part of my regular routine. I was working at a Big Four accounting firm. I just had a million and one things going on at once, it seemed like. And I was like, wow, that's such a great idea, but not for me. And then as I read more into your post, that I think something that you've done such a great job advertising or making people aware is that it doesn't have to be a big thing. Like, the word micro means small. And then when I kind of took a step back and read more of your content instead of just the headliner, but reading it, seeing how doable it was, seeing the different ways you were doing it was just really inspiring, because I think a lot of people, when they hear the word philanthropy, they think Bill Gates or Oprah Winfrey. I don't have billions of dollars to contribute to end world hunger. I wish I did, but I don't.
Right.
And so being able to see how easy it was, and it's more, I think, of a mindset of, am I going to make this a priority? And what one thing am I going to do, makes it a lot easier. Like, you're not eating an elephant anymore. You're just taking a bite. Yeah. And I think that was what really struck me to help me start this like journey of making it a regular part of my life, as opposed to just an event.
Yeah. So tell me how did that, so what does that mean as far as, like, obviously it's a little bit more of a priority now. So what did that start to look like on your end?
The first thing that kind of like sprung me off was, after reading your post, I had two ideas. I was like, okay, I could, actively plan to do something. And my idea came in the form of making tie blankets for refugees, for the people in Russia and Ukraine. That was like kind of like my big, like, helping the world project. And then another one was, there was this kid at church who was just really, really great, always helping other people, never wanted anything in return. And I just had the thought of, maybe I could do something for him. Like, maybe I could just help him out, because no one ever does anything nice for him, because he would just hate that. And I was like, wow, that seems like a great idea. Yeah, and so those are like my two ideas that I was kind of bouncing around. Like, these seem like doable. At that time, I was planning big group events once a month anyway. So I was like, wow, instead of, my group activity going ice skating, maybe we just take that money and make tie blankets and use that time. So it seemed very doable at that time. And I got to the point where I was like, wait a minute, if this micro-philanthropy, this giving, constant giving, isn't an event, I think I'm making it an event. I'm like, why don't I just do both and just make it a part of what I do and how I live? I think that paradigm shift really helped. And so I ended up doing both, which was really, really great experience. It's completely different. But just having that, again, mindset of, like, it doesn't have to be an event. I don't have to pick one or the other way of giving. I can do both. I can schedule this into my life. I can make it a priority, I think was really beneficial.
Yeah. And I love the small step that you took. Like, it wasn't this, okay, I see Grant's post about micro-philanthropy, so I'm going to go build a well, or I'm going to go start a huge nonprofit with 600 people. So often, we get this mindset that is like, okay, I've got to make an impact. And so my impact has to be this ginormous radius of impact. And I love that you just took basically one step outside of yourself to your just local community. And you're like, I could do that. I could get my friends involved with XYZ, or I could view this person in my life that is giving, and I could say that I'm grateful for them in some way, shape, or form. And people often feel like that's the slow route to impact. They want to be involved with these huge things, and so let's just skip all of that. And what they don't understand, and what I've experienced in the work that I'm doing, is I've done that same process that you just described, Sabrina, is that looking a little bit outside yourself is manageable and reachable, so that you feel like, oh, I can be involved with this. Oh, that makes sense. I can learn a little bit more about this. And then that expands your vision by 5% or 6% or whatever that is. And so you can see a little bit more. And so you get a little bit more involved. And over the course of a year or 2 years or whatever that looks like, that small incremental approach leads to this huge range of impact, where if I'm just concerned about this huge project, it's likely that I start down the road and I don't do anything about it. And so it really is this slow, methodical, concerted effort of giving that creates the greatest impact over time. And I just feel like people downplay that all the time. And the type of giving that you're sharing is just so reachable, and it is what actually creates the biggest impact over a lifetime. At least that's been my experience. Sabrina, as you look forward with kind of we've got a new year approaching and those types of things. Is there anything that's kind of been on your mind as far as things that you want to be involved with as you are making giving more just a part of your lifestyle? Is anything like calling to you as far as things that you want to be involved with in the next couple months or so?
Yeah, great question. I would say right now, my biggest thing that I'm kind of like looking forward to New Year is like actually budgeting out like my giving budget, if that makes sense. Because right now, and I'd say I do a fairly good job. Like, when I see a need, I like to do it. And I usually don't really care how much it is. I mean, that sounds crazy, but I'm like, oh, like if somebody needs a meal, like I can spend, $25 to get them dinner, to make them dinner is one of my preferences. I just think it's more meaningful, like you said, the holistic picture. Or if they need X, Y, or Z, I'm like, yeah, like I'll just go pick it up at the store. Like it's fine. And some months, the dollar amount doesn't matter, but sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less. But I think this year I want to be more consistent. So I'm consciously saying, like, oh, maybe I didn't do very much this month. What can I do? What can I give? Just so it's, again, in the forefront of my mind. I'm not waiting for disaster to strike.
Yeah. Yeah. That is like, if you were to ask me, Sabrina, like, Grant, what is the most impactful thing that I could do in the coming year, in the coming months, or whatever the time frame is, to become a more impactful giver? I would have suggested exactly what you're going to do. Put some actual money aside in your budget. It doesn't even matter the dollar amount. Put some money aside in your budget for consistent giving. And what that will do, and you'll experience this, Sabrina, as you're involved with it, is you will automatically become more proactive about your giving because you're already being more proactive about your giving. You're planning it out in terms of having the resources and having the money. And so your brain is already going to start looking for other opportunities to get involved and to spend that because it's already been planned in the back of your mind. And the other thing that you'll see is that consistency of $25 a month or $50 a month or $100 a month or whatever it is that you decide that is going to be your giving budget, the consistency will catalyze your skill set because you're going to be doing things every single month at the very least. Like at the minimum, you're going to be doing something once a month. And it's likely that you're going to be doing something more than that in a month. And that is when, from my experience, things just started to get way, way bigger, not even from like a giving standpoint, but just from a skill set and impact and me getting involved and seeing the ability to do that. And how could I get more people involved and what could I do differently? And all of that, it all stemmed to the kind of the next step that you're working through. So like you definitely have my support in doing that. Like it's incredible way to kind of kickstart the new year and kickstart anybody's type giving.
Absolutely. And I also loved what you said, the dollar amount doesn't matter. And for, some of your listeners who might be, poor college students, I was there, even if it's $5 a month, that's super doable. And let's just say you have a group of friends and you're like, oh, maybe we all want to do this thing for January or February or whatever it is. If you pull your money together, all of a sudden now you have $25. You can pull resources and get more people involved in giving. And again, it doesn't have to be monetary. It can be time. I think time is one of our most valuable resources. I value my time more than I value my money.
Yeah.
So if it's oh, I'm going to, work on donating 5 hours a month of my time to a good cause, to a food pantry, to helping kids in need, to reading to, underprivileged children, whatever it is, I think you can set non-monetary goals as well.
Yeah. And even using that budgeting concept outside of that realm, I love that you've shed a light on that. It doesn't just have to be a monetary value. It can be I want to spend 5 hours a month serving. And just being involved with that gives you like, okay, where would I serve? What would I do? How would I be involved? And it's like all of these things start coming through after you set aside like, oh, I'm going to put 5 hours into this, experience. Yeah. It really is such a powerful thing to kind of start to be proactive, in that way. Sabrina, as we look to close out, our conversation, just loved, being with you around this and the good that you're creating in your life, and what you are going to continue to give and create in the future. It's been so inspiring. It's been great to be with you around it. As you look at your journey, and you think about somebody who is on the sidelines of giving, philanthropy, volunteering, what would you say to them, as far as like advice or something that you've learned, that you would just like want to share with them if you were having that conversation with somebody?
My first piece of advice is just do it. If you're on the sideline, you're thinking, man, that sounds like really nice. That sounds like something I want to do in my life. Just do it. Sacrifice whatever you need, whether it's time, whether it's money, or a combination of both. Prioritize it, budget it out in your schedule, how and what you're going to give. Be specific and intentional. And then my second piece of advice is find a buddy to do it with you. I think if I have somebody that I'm going to do it with or I'm accountable with, the likelihood that I follow through goes up 2,000%, maybe more. So I think, and again, if it's going to be more impactful if there's two of you, if you have someone to keep you accountable, to have someone to talk to about it, I think that's just so essential. And that's what I'm really grateful for you, Grant. Like, whenever I've done something, like, I don't like to bother you all the time, but when I had a really good experience or a really bad one, just knowing that I could just talk to you about it just was really impactful for me in the beginning, being like, okay, I'm trying this out. It's kind of scary. I don't know if this is going to go well, but I can just like have a springboard to bounce ideas off. Was so helpful, and still is helpful, I should say. Like, you're always so gracious when I send you a text or a call you. I'm like, hey, this is what's going on. You're always so supportive, and that I think really helps. So yeah, just decide to do it, schedule it out, make it a priority. And number 2, find a buddy to do it with you. It'll be a lot more fun. And whether that's somebody, in your same town that you can go to food banks with or go volunteer with, that's great. Or if it's someone virtually where you can just like, hey, can I just tell you what I was doing? Or what are you doing? Like, tell me what's going on in your life and how you're giving. Because I think I told you a couple weeks ago, you were so kind and DoorDashed me dinner. And then I was like, hey, I'm stealing your idea. I actually did that the next week. Yeah. Which was just so great. You can get new ideas and have more impact that way.
Yeah. Well, for those of you who are listening, and think that Sabrina is an anomaly or that I am not reachable in this sense, I would just like tell anybody that is out there that if you're looking for a buddy, you can connect with me 100% anytime around this. And I'm going to throw Sabrina under the bus, but I'm sure that Sabrina would also be open to interacting with any of you. So if you are looking for somebody to just be involved with that journey, like, feel free to reach out to either of us. You can find us both on LinkedIn, or if you just need Sabrina's contact information, just reach out to me and I'll talk with her about it, and we can kind of get people set up. I think that's such an important part of this community that we're building, Sabrina, is what you just talked about, is as we are walking through this experience, it is so nice to be able to have people to bounce ideas off of, or get different ideas from, or talk about things that went wrong, or like whatever that looks like. It really is that sense of community is really what this is, what we're looking to build. And so I just love that is the way that you have ended things off here for us, Sabrina. Well, team, that's it for me. Let's go out in the world and create good with the money in our pockets together. Talk soon.